Here's the deal. Today we're diving into one of the most twisted and secretive true crime cases in U.S. history. The Jeffrey MacDonald murders. Back in 1970, the brutal killings of MacDonald's wife and 2 kids at Fort Bragg made headlines. But this story ain't as straightforward as it looks. Enter Ted Gunderson, an ex-FBI guy who started digging into this mess and found some wild stuff, like confessions from supposed cult members and secret conspiracies involving satanic rituals. By the time Gunderson finished his investigation, he was convinced there was something much darker behind it all. We're talking hidden networks, corruption, and even connections that link it to Epstein and, believe it or not, some modern-day celebrity stuff involving P. Diddy. Let's just say there's way more beneath the surface of this tragic crime than you'd ever imagine.
First of all, let me say
I've got a problem right here and I'm gonna have to sew it down. So I'm gonna finish pinning it down after I sew it down, but I'm going to go down through each one of these and these right here to sew it down to make the sandwich out of it. So I'm going to get busy and I'm going to sew this right here down, which of course I'm going to take the pins out to do it. There we go. I don't know what happened here, but for some reason the thread came loose. So we're going to get that right there done.
First of all, let me say thanks a lot. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I don't know if you know it or not. Some of you do, some of you don't. Former head of the FBI, Los Angeles, California, retired in 1979, March. And shortly after my retirement, I was asked to investigate the Jeffrey R. MacDonald case as a private investigator. He's a former Green Beret doctor who was convicted of murdering his wife and 2 children in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, February 17, 1970. The long story, I put in about 2,000 hours on the case. When the case first began, my investigation first began, I told Dr. MacDonald that I would investigate the matter for him. He had just been convicted and was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. I think I'm going to sneeze. I didn't make it. Okay. 3 consecutive life sentences. I told him if I found out that he was guilty, I would no longer be on the case. I would drop my investigation. Much to my surprise, from the evidence that I read, information that I developed over a period of several years, I've established beyond any question of a doubt that this man is absolutely innocent. And on October 25, 1980, I obtained a signed confession from Helena Stokely, the girl in the floppy hat, if you know the case. By the way, there was a best-selling book, Fatal Vision, and a movie out on this. And the girl in the floppy hat said that Dr. MacDonald did not commit those crimes. They were committed by my satanic cult group. And it was my initiation into the cult that night. And she gave me detailed information about the movement within the house that night, who did what. And I said to her, Helena, how do I know you're telling me the truth? And so one of the questions I asked her, the whole series of questions I asked her, and this is on audio video, in some instances a video, but always on audio. She said, I said, Helena, tell me about describe the jewelry box on the dresser in the master bedroom. And she described it right to a T. And just to make sure, I went down to Sears Roebuck and got a catalog and brought it back. And I said, Helena, pick out the jewelry box in this catalog that was on the dresser. She picked out the jewelry box. It matched. Also, she told me that she attempted to ride a rocking horse in the child's bedroom that night, but she couldn't ride it because the spring was broken. The only way she could have known that spring was broken was to have been there the night of the murders, February 17th, 1970. So anyway, I submitted a 1,200 plus page report, actually 1,100 plus page, almost 1,200 pages, in March of 1981 to the FBI, Judge Webster, with a personal letter. He was director of the FBI. And I said, Judge, I believe this man is innocent, and he'd run out of money, and, you know, I've continued to work it as I usually do. And I think that the FBI should continue along the lines of my investigation. And much to my surprise, I started receiving, by the way, it also went to the FBI and to the U.S. Department of Justice, the Solicitor General's office. And much to my surprise, my witnesses, my 19 new witnesses, including Alina Stokely, started calling me and saying, hey, Ted, the FBI has interviewed me. They're trying to get me to recant. And I'm saying to myself, that isn't the responsibility of the FBI. The FBI is supposed to gather information, not destroy it. And that was my first clue that we had a serious problem in that case. And then I continued on, and I had a number of other cases that I handled privately. And in each instance, I noticed evidence was lost, destroyed, stolen. I noticed that there were strong indications of corruption. So I asked myself, now what's going on here? And over the years, I started gathering material until about 2 years ago. Up until about 2 years ago, I kept saying there's a loose-knit network operating in this country involving drugs, pedophilia, pornography, prostitution, corruption, et cetera, 2 years ago, from my research, I'm convinced it's much more serious than that. It's more than a loose-knit network. It is a conspiracy. And you know how the news media comes after us, so we use the word C, conspiracy, that C word. Well, they can come after me all they like, because I guarantee you, right here and now, we do have a conspiracy, and I'm going to prove it to you here today. Now, one of the things that convinced me and really got me started in this regard, by the way, this conspiracy involves pornography, drugs, corruption, involves pedophilia, involves organized child kidnapping rings, the Finders out of Washington, D.C., CIA cover, covert operation involved in the international trafficking of children, terrorism, bank accounts, and it goes on and on. By the way, I strongly urge you to go to my booth after this lecture and get my research, my book and my research on missing children. We're going to go into that a little bit in the lecture. But my Missing Children lecture documents that the Finders, an organization in Washington, D.C., the CIA front. It's a covert operation. They're involved in international trafficking of children. And I have a U.S. Customs report, official U.S. Customs report, in my book on the missing children. So I urge you to get it. It's only $10. Now, if you buy any of my products, any of my research, I beg of you, I don't want you to buy it unless you make a half a dozen copies and send it to your friends, okay? The name of the game with me is not copyright. I could care less about copyright. The name of the game is education, education, education. We need to know what's going on in this country today. So any of my research that you buy, please make copies and get them out to your friends. That's what it's all about. After one of my lectures, here's about 2 years ago, this is why I changed my mind from and using the word loose-knit network to conspiracy. After one of my lectures, a gentleman came up and gave me a book. He said, Ted, in fact, that lecture was specifically on the McDonald case. Ted, here's what it's all about. Take this book and read it. And this is the book, folks, called Pawns in the Game. Now, if you don't know this book, you don't know of it, I urge you to buy it. I've been trying to buy it, but I noticed one of the vendors out here has it. And please, go get the copy of this book. I forget which vendor has it. What? CPA book, yeah. I note they had 3 copies. Are you with CPA book? Huh?
Richard Flowers at CPA.
Richard Flowers. Go get this book when it's over and order some more copies. I'm going to order some myself and start selling them in my flyer. Anyway, it's called Pawns in the Game, and it's by William Guy Carr. William Guy Carr had the same problem I did. He wanted to know what's going on in America and around the world. He was a Canadian, however, and as a result of his research, he wrote this book. Around the world, he was a Canadian, however, and as a result of his research, he wrote this book. So, we have the Illuminati. Now, the Illuminati was established in 1776 by a fellow named Adam Weishaupt. In 1773, he was commissioned by one of the Rothschilds, House of Rothschild, to put together an organization called the Illuminati. And he culminated his work in May the 1st, 1776. If you'll notice, that's a communist holiday. And we're going to have to move along pretty fast. This is actually a 4-hour lecture I'm going to give you today. We're going to do it in probably an hour and 15, 20 minutes. But some of his goals, and the goals that he was commissioned to set up, there were 25 of them. And here they are right here. Here's the beginning of it right here. And then rather than read each one of them, I'm going to summarize it, okay? Because we got a lot of work to get into. Number 1 issue was men are inclined to evil rather than good. Number 2 goal and issue was to preach liberalism. Number 3, use the ideas of freedom to bring about class wars. That's what we're doing today. Number 4, any and all means should be used to reach our goals as they are justified, any and all means. Number 5, their rights lie in force. We're talking about the Illuminati rights lie in force. Number 6, the power of our resources must remain invisible until the very moment when it has gained the strength that no cunning or force can undermine it. And if you will notice, it's been very few people know about the Illuminati, so they have maintained their invisibility until most recently. Number 7, advocated mob psychology to obtain control of the masses. Number 8, use alcohol, drugs, moral corruption, and all forms of vice to systematically corrupt the youth of the nation. I mean, I don't need to document that one. How about South Central LA, CIA drug operations coming in there? How about Mena, Arkansas? Drugs coming into this country, arms and munitions going out. If you don't believe me, talk to Terry Reid, talk to Chip Tatum, talk to some of these other individuals who I know personally know. During the recent, last fall actually, drug hearings by Mr. Arlen Specter, Senator Arlen Specter, one of the big phonies of Washington, D.C., the magic bullet theorist, I watched those hearings. And I couldn't believe the mamby-pamby, weak witnesses he brought forward, people that really had no direct knowledge of the drug operation. And that hearing was about bringing drugs into South Central LA by the CIA. I sent him a list of 16 names of people who had personal, direct knowledge of drugs being brought into this country by the CIA. Never heard another word. None of those people ever appeared as witnesses. I might also mention in Oklahoma City, I sent my report, copied my report back to the committee. I sent them a fax and said I had information which would be vital to your investigation of the Oklahoma City bombing. That report, by the way, is also available to you. I urge you to buy it. Never received a response. Number 9, seize property by any means. We're seeing that on a daily basis. Farmers, businessmen, people who are arrested on nebulous charges, their property being taken away from them. Here's an example right here. This lady right here, she lost everything. Everything. They've come out and raided her house twice, Linda. Twice, Linda. This lady had a house that she bought before her marriage. It was in her name, and they seized it. She no longer has that house. Number 10, deal with the use of slogans such as equity, liberty, fraternity into the mouths of the masses in psychological warfare. Boy, if that isn't Bill Clinton, I never saw it, never heard it before. That man is unbelievable. As former Congressman Dennemeyer describes him, he's a draft-dodging, womanizing, pathological liar, and he certainly fits into item number 10. Number 11 dealt with war, number 11 theory and goal. In 1773, Adam Weizsäcker set down policies that were publicly announced in 1939, folks. 1773, publicly announced 1939 by Britain and the United States. And the war should be directed so that the nations on both sides are placed further in debt and peace conferences conducted so neither combatants obtain territorial rights. Yalta. Perfect example. Stalin, Roosevelt, Winston Churchill after World War II. Number 12 told those present that they must use their wealth to have candidates chosen to public office who would be obedient to their demands and would be used as pawns in the game by the men behind the scenes. The advisors will have been bred, reared, and trained from childhood to rule the affairs of the world. We have that today without any question. The men behind the scenes. Number 13, control the press. If you heard my lecture yesterday on Oklahoma City, I documented that the mainstream media is being controlled by the big power people, by the phony politicians, by the bureaucrats, without any question about it. Information in the media, I have an itchy nose today. Maybe I'm going to kiss a fool or something, okay? We have a documentation of that, and I have that in some of my lecture material out here and also my books. Number 14, their agent tours will come forward after fomenting traumatic situations and appear to be the saviors of the masses when they are actually interested in just the opposite, the killing of the masses. The riots in Watts, the riots in South Central LA, folks. Number 15, create industrial depression and financial panic, unemployment, hunger, shortage of food. Use this to control the masses or the mobs and use the mobs to wipe out all those who dare to stand in the way. Well, I'll tell you right now, every expert I've talked to is talking about food shortage. And it's coming, I'm convinced. And we also know about the market crashing here in October. I had a market specialist on my radio talk show, and if you don't listen to my show, I urge you to, because it's a real good, solid education for you. Just this week, George Green, he was also on my show on October the 6th. George told us on October 6th there would be a crash of the market in October. It came. Now he told us this week there will be another crash and it will drop, he thinks, 2,000 points. So we'll see what happens. I hope it isn't true. Number 15, create industrial depression and financial panics, unemployment. I've already covered that. Number 16, infiltrate into the secret Freemasonry to be used for their purposes. That's been documented many times. Number 17, expound the value of systematic deception, use high-sounding slogans and phrases, and advocate lavish promises to the masses, even though they cannot be kept. Again, Bill Clinton. George Bush was good at that, too, by the way. What's the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats high up? Nothing. Zero. You know, Mr. A, who has a booth next to mine, Mysterious Mr. A, he talks about subliminal messages. If you look at the logo of the Republican Party, you know the elephant with the 3 stars across the top? Well, if you look at it today compared to 2 years ago, the stars have been inverted. The point used to be at the top 2 years ago. Now, the point's at the bottom. Satanic, folks. I can't say for sure, but that's a subliminal message. Inverted stars. Number 18, detailed plans for resolution. Discuss the art of street fighting, which is necessary to bring the population to a speedy subjection. Number 19, use their agent tours as advisors behind the scenes after wars through secret diplomacy to gain control. Number 20, establish huge monopolies toward world government control. We're seeing that today, the huge monopolies. Number 21, use high taxes and unfair competition to bring about economic ruin by controlling raw materials, organize agitation among the workers, and subsidizing competitors. GATT, NAFTA. Number 22, build up armaments with police and soldiers sufficient to protect our interests. A few years ago, we had 11 federal agencies that were authorized to carry sidearms, firearms. Now we have 39. Number 23, members and leaders of the One World Government would be appointed by the director. Okay, Presidential Directive 25 allows the president, by the way, this is classified, secret, not available to the general public, allows and orders that the President of the United States, in the event of a conflict or a crisis in this country, transfers the power, his powers, over to the Secretary General of the United Nations. Number 24, infiltrate into all classes and levels of society, of government, for the purpose of fooling, bemusing, and corrupting the youth members of society by teaching them theories and principles that we know to be false. This is the outcome-based education program being shoved down our throats by the United Nations. Number 25, national and international laws should be used to destroy civilization. There's talk about the world population being decreased to 500 million, the United States population being decreased to 20 million. And we look at the war that we had in the Gulf War syndrome. Look at the people that died there. There were 700,000 troops, American troops there. 4/5 of them today cannot even do a push-up because they're so ill and so sick. They've been washed out of the service. We have a new army, basically. And the story goes on and on. Okay. What are we talking about here? There's a considerable overlap in the United States from the various groups, organizations, individuals, whatever you want to call it. But one of the driving forces behind this movement, the Illuminati, is the satanic cult movement in this country today. Now, when Alina gave me that signed statement, I said, what in the world is this all about? I don't know anything about Satanism. I'd heard the word, and that's about it. From the Bible, of course. So I began my little journey forward. And one of the matters that I developed information about was an individual I learned about was Aleister Crowley. He likes to have his name pronounced Crowley to rhyme with holy. And the Satanists today, and for the number of years in the past, have basically used his philosophy and his writings as a guide. And so let's talk about some of his writings and teachings. And here we have Of the Bloody Sacrifice. And here we have The Blood is the Life. And here on page 94 of this book, it would be unwise to condemn as irrational the practice of those savages who tear the heart and liver from an adversary and devour them while yet warm. In any case, it was the theory of the ancient magicians that any living being is a storehouse of energy, varying in quantity according to the size and health of the animal, and in quality according to its mental and moral character. At the death of the animal, this energy is liberated suddenly. The animal should therefore be killed within the circle. We're talking about the satanic circle, or the triangle, as the base may be, so that its energy cannot escape. An animal should be selected whose nature accords that with that of the ceremony. Thus, by sacrificing a female lamb, one would not obtain any appreciable quantity of the fierce energy useful to a magician who was invoking Mars. In such a case, a ram would be more suitable, and this ram should be virgin. The whole potential of its original total energy should not have been diminished in any ways. And now listen to this sentence, folks, closely. For the highest spiritual working, one must accordingly choose that victim which contains the greatest and purest force. A male child of perfect innocence and high intelligence is the most satisfactory and suitable system. We're talking about human sacrifices. There are, in my estimation, over 3 million practicing Satanists in America today. Now, how did I come up with those figures? I have informants. I have an informant in South Central LA, population of 200,000, told me there are 3,000 practicing Satanists in that area. That's where the famous, well-known case, McMartin case on the preschool took place. I have an informant in Lincoln, Nebraska, told me 3,000 practicing Satanists. Lincoln, Nebraska, town of 200,000, South Bay area, Manhattan Beach area, about 200,000. How much time? I get more than an hour today. So just crank up your cameras. Huh? I'm going to take an hour and a half. Okay? I'm going to take every minute I can give to you folks, because you need to soak this into your brain. Iowa City, Iowa, town of 150,000. 100,000, 1,500 informants. That averages out about 1.5% of the population. Anyway, this is, we're talking about human sacrifice. About 50 to 60,000 individuals are sacrificed every year. There are 8 basic satanic holidays. There are other holidays for the various covens, but there are 8 basic ones that they all honor. Now, one of the practices, this is another book of Aleister Crowley. One of the theories, we talked about human sacrifice, okay, there it is, it's right in their book. I mean, I didn't invent that. That's there. Another aspect of their religion, if you want to call it religion, by the way, the federal government does recognize the satanic movement as a religion, yet in Linda's case, the word Satanism was brought up by her husband's defense attorney. They sealed the records, have not made it available, and when she writes to her children and says, believe in God, she gets a letter back from these people saying, you can't mention God in your letter to your children. That's just an example, okay? Okay, we're talking here about the 666, that's the beast, that's Aleister Crowley himself. Moreover, the beast 666 advises that all children shall be accustomed from infancy to witness every type of sexual act, as also the process of birth, lest falsehood fog and mystery stupefy their minds, whose error else might thwart and misdirect the growth of their subconscious system of self-symbolism. What we're talking about there is children from birth being exposed to sex. These people, the satanic movement in the world, has set up preschools throughout the world for the purpose of getting their hands on our children. The parents drop them off at 9 in the morning, come back and pick them up at 4, 3, 4, 5 at night. In the meantime, in many of these preschools, the children are exposed to sex from the time of birth. In Linda Wiegand's case, it's exactly what happened. These children have been exposed to sex from the time that her ex-husband got his hands on those babies right up to the present time. And I have a page missing, and I'll have to dig that one up somewhere. I don't know what happened to that page. Maybe the Satanist got it. It may therefore be considered improper as a general rule for your sexual gratification to destroy, deform, or displease any other star. Mutual consent to the act is the condition thereof. It must, of course, be understood that such consent, and we're talking about sex now, is not always explicit. There are cases where seduction or rape may be emancipation or initiation to another. Such acts can only be judged by the result. What they're saying is, it's all right to rape somebody. I mean, if they don't consent, it's all right to rape them because it's for the cause. Let's talk about the McMartin case. In April 1985, authorities went to the McMartin case and looked for tunnels under the school. The children had said that they were taken into tunnels under the school. There was a chamber down there. They were sexually molested. That involved ceremonies, adults with robes, candles, chanting. Adults had no clothes on under their robes. And they were taken up into a tunnel and a triplex, a bathroom trapdoor of the triplex next door. They were taken out in automobiles. We're talking about 2, 3, 4-year-old children, folks, and prostituted in the community. The authorities received this complaint in 1983. They began their investigation. The authorities finally, in 1985, went out and decided to look for the tunnels because they said the children were hallucinating. The children also said that they were taken by air up into a mountainous area where they were exposed to satanic ceremonies based on what they described, and brought back in time for the parent to pick up the kids. So the authorities didn't find anything. We're getting off. Pull those next slides. Well, I'll tell you what. In the spring of 1993, I heard that the property of the McMartin School had been sold from the McMartin family to the defense attorney, actually given to him. He didn't make enough off the county. His bill was only $3 million. And from there, he said he was broke and he sold it to a contractor. The contractor was going to build an office building on the space. And I heard that the contractor had this property. And so I went on and contacted him. And I said, dear sir, I would like to have access to that property. He said, I'll give you 2 weeks. I signed a contract, assumed liability, and along with some of the parents, we hired an archaeologist from UCLA, Dr. Gary Stickle, knowing full well that I'm not qualified to say there's tunnels under there, even if I found them. And we began our dig. At the end of 2 weeks, I had to stall, because Dr. Stickle was not quite ready to admit there were tunnels. It took us 34 days. At noon the 34th day, with the bulldozers, with their motors running, ready to knock the building down, he was going to knock the building down and then build this office building. Dr. Stickle said, you know, I can say without any question right now, there have been tunnels under the school, they were filled in. Now I'm going to show you the documentation on the tunnels. This is it, no, keep it there, keep that there. This is the, what we found. This is a preliminary report. I have a 186-page scientific report available to you out here if you're interested, by the way. We found a 9-foot wide subterranean entrance under the west wall of dog room. There were 4 classrooms. That was Ray Bucky's room. By the way, Virginia McMartin and Ray Bucky were tried. Virginia, the grandmother, was acquitted. Ray had a hung jury. And we found these tunnels in the middle of the second trial of Ray Bucky. They could have been used to convict him. We called the prosecutor. He sent his investigator out, Mr. Perez. Mr. Perez told me, I don't want you entering in my conversation with the archaeologist. I said, why? He says, you're too argumentative. I said, well, okay, you go in and talk. I'll just keep my mouth shut. We went in, he talked, and he argued with the archaeologist. Here's an investigator not qualified to talk about tunnels. He said, there aren't any tunnels there, and the archaeologist, of course, argued. But anyway, they didn't use that evidence. Strong evidence in the second trial. They ignored it right in the middle of the second trial. I might mention this. The children identified professional football players, professional baseball players, household name actors, actresses, and the son of the leading politician, not a leading politician, the leading politician in Los Angeles as being perpetrators. Okay, we found an avocado tree root cut on both sides of the entrance, and I'll show you this in just a few minutes. The entrance of the tunnel, as I said, it was 9 feet across the top, and on one side was a live avocado root, on the other side was a dead avocado root. They had to cut that out. We have this, by the way. We found a plastic Disney bag, copyright 1982, about 4.5 feet below the classroom floor, and 3 to 6 inches in from the entrance and under the foundation. Now, the reason that plastic Disney bag is so important is because we think that they filled the tunnel in 1982 when the complaint was initially brought to the attention of the authorities. I said 83 earlier, it's 82 when the complaint was made. And when they filled it in, the plastic Disney bag somehow or other flew in there as they were filling it in and nobody noticed it. Now, who says there is no God, right? What documentation, fantastic documentation, that tunnel, the entrance to that tunnel, this is right at the entrance, was filled in in 1982 or sometime subsequent to 1982. Mr. Ken Lanning, the outstanding know-it-all FBI expert, behavioral science, says that I took that garbage bag in 1993 out of a trash can and placed it there, that I planted evidence. Of course, Mr. Lanning says there's no organized satanic movement in this country today. There's only a few dabblers here and there. Thank you, sir. We have another 3 hours to go. Okay, can you hang in there? Okay, the tunnel proceeded south, then 45 feet through classroom 4 and 3 and north, then 10 feet within the classroom 4. The tunnels were 30 inches wide, 44 to 46 inches deep, with the top of the tunnel 30 inches under the classroom floor. The children were able to walk through it. We're talking about young kids now, right? The adults had to stoop down and walk through it, but they could do it. The tunnels were built in kind of a triangular, or I should say a semicircle type, so that they had natural support, I guess. These people know everything. They're brilliant. The footing between classroom 3 and 4 was arched, where the tunnel passed underneath it, and 12 inches shorter in depth at this location than the same footing 12 feet to the north. I'll show you that in just a minute. That's significant, because the arch was where the tunnel went, and it was arched in that particular location, whereas 12 feet away, it was 12 inches longer or thicker. Footing between, let's see, there were 4 large upright containers were found in the tunnel under the arch, obviously hand-placed. A 9-foot wide chamber was found along the tunnel across classroom 4. The top of the chamber and the top of sections of the tunnel had layers of plywood covered with tar paper, which had apparently been supported by cinder blocks and 2x2 and 2x4 wooden posts found underneath. Tunnel features made it evident that the tunnels had been hand-dug. The 7-foot tunnel extended into the triplex next door. Tunnel extended from the bathrooms off the office and classroom 1 to the front yard of the triplex next door. Front yard concealed from the street by a 3-car garage. Children described the entrance and exiting tunnels in the triplex yard exactly where the tunnels and exit were found. A 39 by 41 inch area under a hole cut in this neighbor's bathroom floor had been excavated and subsequently tilled. Now, that was where the kids told us ahead of time that they were taking it up in the trapdoor in this bathroom. And there was a crawl space in the house about like this, and we got one of our skinny archaeologists to go in there, take pictures. The bathtub protruded underneath the floor of the bathroom. There was a bathroom in the back of the same building in another apartment. It did not protrude there. This was the space we're talking about, 39 by 41 inches. Just enough room for a kid to come up and be taken out. Other significant facts: small white plastic plate with 3 pentagrams, hand-drawn on the top of the light green paint, was found by the archaeologists. Pentagrams were hand-drawn by an adult and not part of the manufacturer's design. Many other artifacts were found whose analysis will be released upon completion of the test. The analysis has been released. That's the scientific report I told you about. No doorknob on classroom 3, only a deadbolt lock. Each classroom had an on and off switch which was labeled fire alarm. The system did not connect to the fire station but was used as an alert within the school if somebody came around. More than 2,000 artifacts were found under the school floor, including over 100 animal bones. Due to the constraints and time constraints and so forth, we had to discontinue the process on noon the 34th day. By the way, this cost us, a lot of people donated their time. It still cost us money. Cost us between $55,000 and $60,000. I personally put in $17,000, which I ended up, in many instances, paying over a long-term period payment plan. This is a floor plan of the whole lot. There is, right there, the building itself. This is the entrance, the concrete slab, a vacant lot there. This is a yard. And here's the avocado tree we're talking about. And here's the entrance right there. Now here is the tunnel. It came in here, extended here, and here's the chamber across here. We think, but didn't have time to explore this. The tunnel went up here. Now we definitely were able to come up with it here, right here, and it came into the bathroom over here. Okay. There's the entrance. It's 9 feet across here. I'll show you a diagram in a few minutes. There's the avocado tree. Those roots are live. Over here, we had a dead avocado root. Okay, next. There's a plate that was found in the play yard, buried about 6 inches under the sand, with the pentagram on it. That's right. And here's a diagram of the tunnel. This is the entrance to the tunnel. Now that's the floor, the footing for the classroom floor. Here's the plastic Disney bag, was located right there, partially under the footing and partially out. And this AF means artificial fill. And this was the shape of the entrance. Okay.